listening to the Heartland Author Podcast. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For today's episode, I had the honor of interviewing Chris Donaldson. Chris, who is from Northern Ireland, has ridden his Moto Guzzi motorcycle on ultra-long distance trips across many countries, and he is the author of the book Going the Wrong Way, which is about his motorcycle adventures. I'm here with Chris Donaldson, who is the author of Going the Wrong Way, which is a book about his long-distance motorcycle journeys. Chris, welcome to the Heartland Author Podcast.
Glad to be here.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners.
Well, I'm in my middle 60s. I live in Belfast, Northern Ireland. I've been born and bred here. When I was about 15 or so, I decided to get out of town. Northern Ireland wasn't a great place to be in the 70s. Bombs and bullets and all that sort of thing. So I decided to go to Australia, and for some reason I decided to do it on a motorbike. I left in 79 and I got as far as London, and then the Ayatollah Khomeini took over the American embassy in Tehran, and that Islamic revolution stopped me going east. So I ended up basically riding my motorbike down to South Africa, through the deserts, through the Middle East, Sahara Desert. Sailed back to UK on a yacht, shipped it back to the States, up to Canada, and rode all the way down to South America, finishing in 1981. And then I got on with normal life, and then about 3 or 4 years ago decided to put on my story in a book. I never written a book before, never written anything apart from checks in the last 40 years. And even when I was at school, I was never a big hit with the English teachers. Certainly not an academic. So it was with quite trepidation I got around to starting to write a book. But it got published 3 years ago, and it's doing very well on Amazon. It's got 1,200 reviews. It's got lots of nice things people have been saying about it. And I suppose one of the morals of the story, I suppose, is that if I can write a book, anybody can.
Now, but without spoiling too much of your book, what is Going the Wrong Way about?
Well, it's about a number of things. It's obviously about a motorbike trip, but that's more the cover story, if you like. Going the Wrong Way is a double meaning. I left the UK to go to Australia, and I ended up in Argentina. So that's sort of going the wrong way one way. But it's also just an outlook in life as well. How you can, people follow the right thing to do the right thing your parents tell you to do. You go the safe, I suppose, doing the safe option if you've got two choices. There's great pressures on kids, especially, to take the safe option. So the point is maybe that by taking the unsafe option, the road less travelled, if you like, going the way the masses don't go, you can have a lot more fun and a lot more good times, and much more beneficial to you. One stage in the trip earlier on, I realised that I wasn't actually going anywhere in particular. I was just travelling for the sake of travelling, because I couldn't get to Australia. I was just travelling with no particular destination. And I was learning, one of the joys of the book was that I was able to learn how to enjoy the moment rather than always looking forward to the end point of the journey, whereas it's really the journey itself you should be enjoying.
Now, how did you go from failing English exams in school to becoming a best-selling author?
Oh, that's easy. That was spell checker. Spell checker was invented in the last 40 years. And also copy and paste and delete. I actually started writing the book in 81 and just doing it by shorthand. And it was pages of crossing out and pages of rubbish. And I was about halfway through it, and a friend brought a book called Jupiter's Travels, which is about another guy who did a similar trip to me. So I thought, well, he's already published a book about it, and he's a journalist, he's a professional author. I just gave up. I thought there's no point in me trying to write a book after he's done that. But what I didn't realize that he was 45 years old, I was 21. With completely different outlooks in life, different outlooks on the journey. So the book I wrote was a completely different book to his anyway. But no, technology has improved an awful lot. Made a big difference. Made it a lot easier to pick up and write from somebody without an English literature background. But I did a couple of online courses as well. I got some advice through reading books, how to, and YouTube, and a couple of online courses as well.
Yeah, I'm going to go into an anecdote about why I dropped out of college. It wasn't, in my case, it wasn't because I failed English. I think I did fail like a rhetoric course when I was in college, in what's called community college or junior college here in the States. It's where you earn like a 2-year undergrad degree instead of a 4-year. And I was an accounting major, and I dropped out of college after I failed a basic accounting course twice. So for me, going into writing is more about trying to get into a field that is as far different than the field I tried to study for in college.
Yeah, so you completely jumped ship.
Yeah.
Well, whenever I was at school, these days kids they've got dyslexia, they've got Asperger's, of ADHD. There's all sorts of labels kids have for not achieving what they should achieve. In my day, we were just stuck in a corner. We were just told we were stupid,
Well, you're not stupid. I'll just say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have an autism spectrum disorder. It was called Asperger's syndrome until a few years ago. Now it's just called autism spectrum disorder.
Right.
Now, is Going the Wrong Way self-published or traditionally published?
It's self-published. The whole process has been a bit of a journey in itself, from writing the book to getting it formatted and edited and on Amazon. But it was completely self-published. It did approach a number of publishers, but it's practically impossible to. There's so many hoops you got to jump through to get something published. I'm sort of quite glad I did self-publish it myself, because it meant I didn't have to take out things I didn't want to take out. I was able to control the copy myself, and there's definitely things I would have a professional copy editor might have wanted to take out. It would have lost some of the personality of the book. But no, self-publishing. Financially, it's reasonable. Again, with technology, with Amazon, it's makes sense to do it.
Now, what are some of the specifications, like engine displacement, horsepower, stuff like that, of the Moto Guzzi motorcycle you did your long-distance journeys on?
Well, I still got the bike, and after I published the book, a friend said to me, "You never actually got to Australia, why not have another go now?" So we decided we'd take the same motorbike and try and drive to Australia last year. And I actually got there in March. So the bike's 45 years old, I'm 63, so I think we had a combined age of 109 by the time we got there. It's really a classic motorbike at the minute. It's made by Moto Guzzi. It's an Italian make. It's an 850cc V-twin. It's not exactly the bike of choice that people would choose for a long distance trip. It's a road bike. We've got adventure bikes that are very popular now for various reasons. They're just sort of designed for going on and off road. My bike was designed for going on fast motorways. So it was a bit of a struggle taking it across the Sahara Desert. It was 500 miles without any road at all, but it's less surprisingly well. And as I say, writing a book's had a great impact on my life because it's got me back into motorcycling. I haven't really bothered with them for some time. But it's made me met up with a lot of old friends that I haven't seen for 40 years, and it's got me riding across the world again.
Yeah, going across the Sahara Desert on a motorcycle that's not really built for off-road motorcycling does not sound easy.
No, well, maybe my English teacher was right. Maybe it was a bit stupid. It certainly wasn't the cleverest thing to do. It was something that happened. I didn't intend to do it. We intended to take a train across the desert, but the train left early, and we didn't want to wait a week in a little dusty hole without two buildings, and that was about it in the middle of the desert. So decided to drive with a couple of other guys. As it happened, it took the best part of a week to cross the 500 miles anyway. Some days we only did 10 miles a day digging and pushing. So the train actually beat us in the long run anyway, but it was a tremendous experience being out in the desert for a week, battling the odds.
Now, how did your long distance motorcycle traveling affect you mentally and physically?
Mentally, it made me much more confident, much more aware of myself and my surroundings. I think when you're a kid, you're brought up, you're always under the influence of your parents and then your friends and your school and your teachers, and there's always somebody telling you what to do and what you should be wearing, what you should be thinking. So one of the reasons I wanted to go on a bike was to be completely on my own and up to my own. Every challenge would be met by myself and nobody else. So it made me much more self-sufficient and able to look after myself. And even in business, 40 years later, those traits have been very, very important to me. Physically, as I said, the first trip when I was 21, you think you're indestructible when you're 21. I did the second trip to Australia there when I was 63. And it's nice to be able to cope with the same sort of mental and physical challenges that I did 40 years ago. But it certainly, when I was 21, I could have got off the bike and gone out and partied all night. Whereas now, when I got off the bike, I just wanted to go to bed and have a hot cocoa and get a good night's sleep, you know?
What is the most interesting place you visited on your long-distance motorcycle rides?
Well, it's a difficult one. There's so many places fascinating. Cape Town's one that always struck me as being a blend of beauty and sort of terrible things going on in apartheid. Very often, think back into memories of places, it's very often the people that you met in the places that actually really made the impression on you rather than the geography or the architecture or whatever. It's, you think back, you had a good time in New York or a good time in San Francisco or wherever it was, rather than the actual city itself, But this trip certainly, probably the most unusual place or surprising was I finally got to Iran after 43 years trying to get through it. And it was a place that was certainly, with all the undertones about the government there and the trouble that's been with the West in the last 45 years. It was a worry going there, but actually it was one of the nicest, the people were most friendly of the whole trip. People couldn't do enough for you. They wanted to take you home, put you up. Anytime I got lost, they would actually take me through the town. They'd tell me to follow them, taking me through the town. A couple of times they actually bought me tanks of petrol. The petrol stations wouldn't take any money from me. So it was just sort of overwhelmed with the generosity and the friendliness of the Iranians, especially against the sort of the nervousness I had about going in the first place.
Now, how does Parkinson's disease affect your ability to do various things in life?
Well, it's pretty mild so far, so it hasn't affected me too much. I've been able to control it with tablets and using a sort of good exercise regime. And I was certainly concerned about riding a motorbike because you're obviously holding onto the handlebar. You don't want to be shaking your way across the road, you know. Um, but I find that when you're doing something like riding a motorbike, you're concentrating on one thing, and once you get into the groove, it can be quite relaxing and stress free. It's a bit like meditating. So I find that it really didn't affect me that much. I was able to cope quite well with it. Um, in India last year, I actually ran out of my tablets, but it was fine. I was able to cope without them just by um, keeping myself stress free, and keeping concentrating on the one thing, which is staying alive on the roads, I guess.
Well, Chris, that was my final question. I thank you for appearing on the Heartland Author podcast, and you're a wonderful guest.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
Chris was a wonderful and insightful guest for this podcast. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to write your imagination. Bye for now. You can learn more about me and my book writing projects at campaaronapollo.wixsite.com/authoraac. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at AuthorAAC and on Instagram at AACScribe. Copyright 2023, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.